I want to see if you can survive in Third God Sanctuary, Moment Queen coldly said. Hansen thought about asking something else, but the jade gold tree that was about 100 meters high was still growing. There were no more chest fruits, but the tree's growth hadn't stopped. It looked as if it was prepared to sunder the skies. The jade gold tree does not belong in Second God Sanctuary. The Second God Sanctuary cannot handle the energy force it possesses, so it will break the sky and pierce through to Third God Sanctuary. Moment Queen spoke with excitement, looking up at the tree that continued to grow before their eyes. Hansen felt the entirety of Purple Mountain quake, and eventually rise. With the mountain set to its trunk, Moment Shelter was lifted from the earth below and taken up into the skies. Hansen was shocked. He was not yet a surpasser, and while entering Third God Sanctuary like this gave him a better chance at an initial survival, long-term survival did not seem likely. Any ordinary creature in Third God Sanctuary would be stronger than Hansen. As the jade gold tree continued to grow, the gourd in Hansen's hand became more and more excited. Hansen could sense its actual feelings of happiness. Hansen had no idea why it felt happy. Moment Queen looked delighted and said, Finally, I can return to Third God Sanctuary once more. It is finally happening. Souls of that land better watch out, for I am back with a vengeance." Hansen's gourd shone gold and it vibrated with a greater ferocity. A black light began to seep and shine from its tip. Has the gourd chosen to hatch now? Talk about bad timing. If whatever was inside the gourd was something good and beneficial, it was likely that Moment Queen would opt to take it away and claim ownership. Hansen noticed Moment Queen looking at the gourd. She frowned and asked him, "What are you doing?" She had followed Hansen for a while and knew much about who he was and what he possessed, but she believed the gourd he owned was little more than a toy. But the black hole at its tip seemed capable of bending dimensions, and this made her frown. Nothing. Hansen wasn't sure how to respond. He had owned this gourd for the longest time, and he'd lambast the heavens for the misfortune if it was stolen by Moment Queen now. After Hansen said this, he thought about putting the gourd away, but the black hole on the gourd expanded, and it spit out a strange manifestation of black light towards the jade gold tree. The tree was surrounded by this black light, and its energy was being visibly drained from it. Like a physical river, the energy followed the black light back to its source, the gourd. "Do you want to die?" When Moment Queen noticed that the jade gold tree was dying and its efforts to break the sky were now failing, she believed it to be the malevolent work of Hansen. She lunged forward to attack him. Hansen was prepared to evade, but before he did, the gourd fired another beam of black light towards Moment Queen's purple shortsword. The purple shortsword was whipped out of her hands. As if caught by a gravity well, the sword then started moving towards the gourd. At the sight of this, Moment Queen's face dropped aghast. Moment Queen looked at the gourd, failing to believe one of her 6 cog armaments had been taken by it. Although it was quickly smothered by her rage, Moment Queen was full of surprise. At this sudden development, however, Hansen was secretly exuberant. He hadn't expected the gourd to prove so invaluable, particularly in his time of need. "My baby gourd, suck her." Hansen wasn't even sure if the gourd would follow such a command, but regardless, he barked it out. And then, the gourd did indeed listen. A black beam was fired towards Moment Queen. Within this strong well of suction, the 6 cog armaments were being sucked into the gourd one by one. Suck it, suck it. Hansen was incredibly excited. He had believed himself to be a dead man, but when the gourd sprang to life, things truly seemed to be working out in his favor. "Suck it hard," Hansen shouted at Moment Queen as he lifted up his gourd. The black light continued to burst forth, and the purple crown was the next to depart her brief ownership. She had trouble fathoming the power it possessed, for it to so easily trump and consume her armaments. "How can Second God Sanctuary birth something such as this?" Moment Queen asked in a tone of obvious desperation. The cockiness she once exuded had all vanished. Moment Queen's purple armor, the final item, was ripped off her body. It became a formless purple light, and in a blink disappeared into the gourd's trail of suction. Moment Queen was now clothed only in her underwear. "Little Moment, what were you saying?" Hansen stared at her as he held his gourd, and he spoke to her slowly. "What is that thing?" Moment Queen's spirit had been wholly defeated. She looked at the gourd, struggling to believe that her equipment had been taken away so easily. Without the protection of her 6 cog armaments, she could not rebel against Hansen and his contract. "Come here," Hansen said. And Moment Queen unwillingly approached. Hansen pushed her on the ground and slapped her round buttocks. The slap was so loud, She trembled with wide eyes. It wasn't because of the pain, though. It was due to the humiliation she was now being forced to endure. Never before had she been treated like this in the sanctuaries. Of course, Hansen couldn't care less. Repeatedly, he continued to smack, slap, and spank her bum. Eventually, the fabric of her underwear was torn open. This revealed the reddened skin of her sore but plump bottom. Hansen was incredibly mad on the inside, for that was the closest brush with death he had ever endured. Had things not turned out the way they had, Moment Queen would have killed him and the Silver Fox. Moment Queen, still under the control of her contract, was unable to resist. Being humiliated in such a fashion actually brought tears to her eyes. I will never forgive you for this. There were many things Moment Queen wanted to do, but she couldn't bear the humiliation she was currently enduring. She desperately wished she could self-destruct. Oh, you want to die, do you? I'm not allowing you to get away with what you have done that easily. What was it that you said to me earlier? My death was going to be a slow one. Hansen had now changed the contract, forbidding her from being able to self-destruct. Boom, the jade gold tree died. Purple Mountain and Moment Shelter, which had resided atop it, both fell all the way back down to where they had previously rested. The jade gold tree still remained, but it was little more than a deadwood sculpture of what it had once been. There was nothing left for the gourd to drain, and following this, the black hole blipped out of existence as easily and as quickly as it had first appeared. The gourd itself returned to its original, dull appearance. Now, Hansen stopped his torture of Moment Queen's bottom. He kissed the gourd and stroked it, saying, "Oh, baby gourd, might you allow me to play with the 6 pieces of cog gear you recently consumed?" The gourd gave no response, and he wondered whether or not it could hear his commands following its deactivation. Despite Hansen's continued pleading, there was still no response. To say that this put a dampener on his mood was putting it lightly. He looked at Moment Queen, who was still crying, and said, "Moment, what can you tell me about this gourd?" Moment Queen did not respond, and her face was still a blubbering mess. She had never felt so insulted before, and even if she did know something about the gourd, she would most certainly not oblige his desire for knowledge and explain to him the nature of the gourd that had defeated her. It looks like your punishment was not sufficient. Hansen used his mind to control Moment Queen, forcing her to stand up and approach him properly. When she saw Hansen rub his hands in an impish fashion, she became angry. But she also knew that resistance would only lead to further humiliation. Holding back the urge to kill him, she remorsefully said, "It does not come from the second god's sanctuary." "Okay, continue. What is it then?" Hansen asked. "I am not sure, but I assure you I have never seen such a thing before. Also, it has not yet been born. There is something within, as you undoubtedly know, but I cannot even wager a guess about what lies inside. If I did have to guess, though, I would say that it is a high-class genoseed." Moment Queen did her best to subdue the shame that told her not to say a word. Genoseed. As he held the gourd, Hansen could still feel the pulsating of its heartbeat. He believed she really didn't know much about it. If she had known, she would have performed better against it earlier. It looks like only the third god sanctuary can produce something like this. Hansen put away the gourd and returned Moment Queen to the Sea of Soul. He didn't want to kill her yet, as it wouldn't make him feel any better over what had transpired. It looks like this is a mystery that will only reveal itself once I reach the third god's sanctuary. After Hansen deleted the confidential information he had received, he returned to the sanctuary. All of a sudden, he received orders bidding him to join a training program. Hansen went back to ask Ji Yanran about it, and she said it was a training program of the Alliance. It was something related to the crystallizer civilization. All members of the Daphne had to take part, including her. Hansen had no choice but to join, since he was issued the order. When Hansen arrived at the training base at Mocha Planet, he was surprised to see that it wasn't only his team that was receiving the training. A lot of Crystallizer Ruin research members would receive this training as well. All in all, there were more than 10,000 people there. Immediately after arriving, Hansen was greeted by someone who fanboyishly recognized him. The man hastily moved to intercept him. Hansen was quite happy about this, and he couldn't help but think, "Haha, I really am rather popular. It really is you, sweet. Your fiancée is the princess of the Alliance, Ji Yanran. We are very fond of her." What the hell? Hansen had rarely felt so awkward. Then, a woman soldier approached Hansen and handed him a pen and paper. She politely asked, "Can I have your signature, please? Can you write Ji Yanran's fiancé for your name?" Hansen almost bit his tongue off and was tempted to grab her clothes and yell, "Are you trying to make me look like a fool?" How shameless are you asking me to sign this? The female soldier, however, looked like a very shy individual. Despite being disheartened, Hansen complied with her request and proceeded to scribble down Ji Yanran's fiancé. The soldier thanked Hansen with a frightening amount of glee and hugged the paper tightly. Hansen heard a familiar voice laughing somewhere nearby. He turned around and saw a familiar yet strange shadow. Hansen was very surprised, but still he approached her. He had not expected to see Wang Mengmeng there. Since he last saw her, she had grown taller. She exuded a sense of greater maturity, but her overall appearance was still an undeniable victim of her baby face. Tell me, handsome, as the fiancé of a princess, do you feel pressured? Wang Mengmeng asked, with her eyes wide open in curiosity. Before arriving here, I believed myself to be a figure of greater fame than she was. Hansen was feeling hopeless. I recall you are a member of the Royal Warframe team, so how come you are here today? Honestly, I'm not sure. Some of us received the order to come, whereas others didn't. Perhaps there is an important operation regarding the crystallizers, Wang Mengmeng hypothesized. Let's walk and talk. Where is your room? Hansen spoke as he walked alongside Wang Mengmeng. In an office of the training camp, an old man watched a video stream of the ongoing scene between Hansen and Wang Mengmeng. Teacher, would you like me to bring Hansen here? Wenjong asked the old man. The old man shook his head and said, No, there is no need to. I do not wish to make my identity and presence known to him yet. I will continue to watch them in secret in the meantime. The crystallizer civilization lessons he had received in the past were mostly the same, but this time Hansen noticed they were going into a lot more depth. After the training was over, Hansen went to a restaurant with Fat Squad leader and his teammates. Although they weren't in the same camp, they had to work hard in the sanctuary. Furthermore, their working locations were not the same, and so they did not meet up frequently. They spoke about the many trials and tribulations they had each experienced in their lives up to that point. Fat Squad leader recalled a tale in which he almost died while in the sanctuary. It was a story fraught with danger and arduous troubles, but he was a remarkable storyteller. He told the tale with humor and enthusiasm, which had everyone else leaning in to listen. Little Han, you have seen more than we, I am sure. Could you tell us a story concerning one of your adventurers? Fat Squad leader asked, and his request was joined by nods and noises of agreement from the others there too. Hansen and Fat Squad leader had been drinking, so Hansen told them much about what he had been through. He received a barrage of questions as he told the stories. Hansen wanted to embellish the tales he told, but he realized his adventures were as fantastical and as wild as a story could get. He started to acknowledge how almost ridiculous his experiences were, that further flourishes weren't even necessary. What a load of shht. A moving mountain, a tree that sunders the sky and bears fruit that craps out treasure. Where do you think you are, the third god's sanctuary? As Hansen told his stories to the keen listeners, an inappropriate comment was made from someplace behind them. The voice was mocking. When Hansen's story was interrupted, the listeners all turned their heads to see who had the gall to do so. Friend, we were only exchanging tales. You interrupt us as if you have been offended. Fat Squad leader stood up and spoke to the person who had interrupted them and noticed he was standing in the presence of others too. Legion had recognized who those people were, and so he told Fat Squad leader, they are from the Royal Warframe team. I saw them while we were training. Fat Squad leader frowned and said, If we are allied, then I can excuse your bullish intrusion. At the very least, I hope that you can be a touch more respectful going forward. Fat Squad leader sat back down, but the man raised his eyebrows and retorted, Oh, I apologize. But our Royal Warframe team is not comprised of bullshitters. At this, Hansen and Fat Squad leader furrowed their brows. Oh, I apologize again. Did I touch a nerve? That's fine. I'm sure that Hero Han can kill all manner of wretched creatures and surmount insurmountable challenges. Do not worry for my talent, as I am not a person that can move mountains and bring down the sky. I am merely a surpasser that has just reached the third god sanctuary. Ha ha. I suppose he could fight me if he figured he was strong enough. The man was unbearably cocky. Do you have no shame? You are a surpasser who has come to challenge and pick on evolvers. Fat Squad leader was aggravated. With a mocking expression, the man said, I may be a surpasser, but I can only suppose I am weaker than the monsters Hero Han described. If he can deal with those creatures, then I am sure he would have no problem competing against me. Okay, are we to have a friendly duel or commit to a Warframe fight? Hansen asked, after standing up and moving right in front of the man. Hansen was not willing to accept their bullying. Hansen had already taken the time to sense the Surpassor's energy flow, and he noted how he wasn't that far off the average super creature. He was most certainly not someone special. Haha, are you serious? You are going to fight us, the Royal Warframe team. The man looked as if he had just heard the funniest joke ever devised, and he couldn't help but burst into laughter. The other team members joined in with the man's amusement, and they all did their best to mock Hansen. The Royal Warframe team was the greatest team in the Alliance. Only the most elite were able to join them, and they were people who were able to control warframes. I have heard of you, Royal Warframe Lot, and I have heard there are many Warframe Masters. But I have also heard that the most powerful Warframe users are female. The men are dragging the team down, apparently, Hansen said. Fat Squad Leader and Chu Cheng laughed heartily at the burn. The leader of the Royal Warframe team was a woman, and most members were indeed female, like Yu Qianxun, who Hansen had filmed advertisements with. Wang Mengming was a member of their team, as well. With all of its authoritative figures being women, the Royal Warframe team had been dubbed the Royal Princess Team. It wasn't a snide name, and no contempt was harbored in its usage. The nickname really was just used to illustrate the many women in its ranks. What did you say? Now that Hansen and Li Jin said this, the man's face had changed. The other men accompanying him stood up angrily. They had been mocked for this state of affairs before, and hearing it used against them again was really quite triggering. Okay, let's have a Warframe fight. The men who had now been provoked looked at Hansen with anger in their eyes. Little Han, are you okay? Fat Squad Leader asked as Hansen sat inside the hologram machine. They had been mocked, yes, but their transgressors were from the Royal Warframe team. They were incredibly proficient at operating warframes, and the person he was going up against was a surpassor to boot. His foe's fitness was higher than any evolvers, which gave him an advantage. Oh, it's a royal knight. Wasn't that person ranked 7th in the realm of evolvers warframe combat? It has been a long time since I last saw him. It really is him. It's Li Chengxian from the Royal Warframe team. He's a surpasser now, so it is fairly obvious why you don't see him much anymore. Cool. Who is he going up against? Some fellow with a strange ID. I've never heard of him before. It is a guest account. Hansen logged in with a guest account, and this provided him the ID of guest, followed by a bunch of numbers. Having received the invitation to battle from Li Chengxian, he entered the combat arena. Instantly, the countdown began. It had indeed been a long time since Hansen operated a warframe, and he wasn't familiar with what models were currently being used. He chose SKTS due to his familiarity with it, but it was incredibly outdated by that point. Seeing Hansen select the SKTS, Li Chengxian coldly smiled. The SKTS was a regular warframe, outdated and lacking high mobility. Its weapons were unremarkable, and it lacked a variety of them. It was generally considered unsuitable for battles against other warframes. Hansen chose this warframe due to being familiar with it. Li Chengxian wasn't going to be polite, or go easy on Hansen though. He was ready to whip him like a dog and teach him a stern lesson. Hansen had mocked the males of their team, so to assert the victory he wanted, Li Chengxian chose the best warframe possible. It was a super biological warframe called King of War. A King of War was the latest model, and it was 5 generations ahead of the SKTS. When he moved his hand, King of War came to life with 13 cannons, immediately aiming for Hansen. He'd blast the SKTS to Kingdom Come before it even took a step towards him. 13 weapons all at once. That's pretty powerful and talented. These Royal Knights really are a crazy lot. Oh, that poor soul. That guy in the SKTS will be nothing but scrap metal before he takes his second step. When the SKTS moved, however, everyone was shocked. At that moment, they noticed a fluidity unlike anything they thought a machine could perform. It was like the SKTS had melded with the agility of a human. The movements of the SKTS were delicate, and each step exuded a sense of real soul. It was difficult for people to describe what they were watching, those quick movements, by the sanctuaries. Who is controlling that SKTS? That's insane. Amidst everyone's shock, the SKTS continued its graceful dance forward. The trail it took was strange, and when the cannons fired, every shot missed and hit the ground around it. The SKTS was like a silver phantom. Fortunately, warframe fights were not determined by simple speed. There were many contributing factors that lead to victory. If much of the fight had relied on speed, Hansen would never have been able to catch up to King of War. King of War was very powerful. It had a very high defense, and it possessed many different weapons. This meant its size was less than an ideal, it was big, and as a result, clumsy and a little stiff to move. This was where the SKTS could prove itself. The SKTS was far lighter and its agility was high. With Han Sen's incredible eighth sense, Han Sen was able to predict King of War's movements and adapt accordingly. Is this fight staged? Ha! This is way too fake. How can King of War not manage to strike that old SKTS when it's headed straight his way? King of War fires continuously, and I'm expected to believe the SKTS can dodge such a barrage without a scratch. How much did SKTS pay for this shameless, laughable display? I'll pay double just to make it stop. It may be just a show, but SKTS's power is nothing to laugh at. That being said, the agility is difficult to believe. The fitness level of whoever is inside that SKTS must be rather lofty. This isn't a show, numbnuts. This is the real deal. I saw how this fight got started, over in the lobby. Li Chengxian started picking on Han Sen and his fellows, so he offered to duel him with a warframe. Don't you recall when SKTS first entered the market? Han Sen was the one who starred in its advert when he was still in military school. He was SKTS's alpha operator. It's no wonder he is so strong. Are you sure this isn't a show? It seems fake. Why isn't he fighting back? Someone asked. Oh, he wants to fight back. The thing is, he can't, an old Warframe soldier said as he looked at the SKTS. King of War has many native, built-in weapons, as well as weapons that are external attachments. It may seem powerful, but too many weapons make you bulky, and accuracy comes at the cost of time. The SKTS manages to always place itself inside King of War's aiming dead zone. By the time King of War adjusts his position, the SKTS has already moved to another dead zone. King of War will never be able to lock on to him, provided the SKTS keeps this up. So, how can he possibly fight back? Everyone was exuberantly happy, watching this fight unfold. The only one not having a good time was Li Chengxian. Try as he might, he could not lock on to the SKTS. Everything he tried to do was thwarted, as if the SKTS had the ability of foresight. It was like someone had installed a window into his soul, and there his opponent was, peering right through it. It even frightened him a bit. A fight like this was not unlike torture, and it made Li Chengxian feel a phantom pain. If the Royal Warframe team's honor wasn't at stake, he would have happily thrown in the towel. It had been a very long time since Han Sen last touched a Warframe, and he recalled the times he would occasionally hop in one for some fun. Moving at high speed, with a sword that did not stop swinging and the laser blaster that kept on firing, it was an orgy of sounds. The pinging of laser on metal was particularly delightful for the ears of men, and it made them super excited. Joie Dongle watched the screen with an excitement in his heart. It reminded him of himself, in the days of his youth. He is not from the Luo family, and he did not practice falsified Sky Sutra. This is interesting, and now I have come to the decision that yes, I will recruit him as my student. It was difficult to believe that a Luo family member hadn't learned the falsified Sky Sutra, but had still become so powerful. His skills were top tier. Boom. Only God could have kept count of the hundreds of slashes the SKTS delivered to King of War, but it finally broke. And, with King of War's breaking, the fight came to an end. Li Chengxian did not say a word following his defeat. Upon his exit, he quickly summoned for his men to depart alongside him. He was far too ashamed of his performance to muster a single word, since he was a Royal Warframe team operator who had just lost to an old, outdated SKTS. Footage of the fight had been uploaded to Skynet. The full-length video was titled SKTS Murders King of War, and it didn't take long for it to go viral. Later that night, Han Sen wobbled his way to the bathroom. When he was in front of the door, an old man walked out. Han Sen was so drunk he didn't even look at him properly. He felt as if the old man's eyes were incredibly bright. He glanced towards them. As he looked, Han Sen froze. His pupils went smaller and his eyes were sapped of the joy they once possessed. Kid, take my mind test. If you pass, I will allow you to be my student, Zhuo Donglei cockily said. As a demigod, Zhuo Donglei was incredibly talented in the realm of influencing the wills of others and performing illusions. Han Sen was merely an evolver and helpless to resist. Zhuo Donglei walked in front of Han Sen and brought him to sit down. Han Sen's attention was vacant now, for he had been placed in Zhuo Donglei's infinite mind trial. For surpassers, it traditionally took them an hour to escape it. Kid, suffer a little. When you come out, you will obey me. Zhuo Donglei thought about how Han Sen might respect him following the trial, and smiled with jittery excitement. Zhuo Donglei placed a hand on Han Sen's shoulder, and when he did, Han Sen burped. Following that, a wretched noise sounded. Han Sen threw up all over Zhuo Donglei. Zhuo Donglei was caught at unawares. On any other occasion, he'd dodge without trouble, but he had become too self-obsessed, and his excitement over Han Sen had gotten the best of him. The two looked at each other for a second, and after acknowledging the situation, Han Sen said, "I am so sorry. It's okay." Zhuo Donglei lowered his head and left, not wanting Han Sen to see his face. He didn't look like the strong man that he was right now, especially since he was covered in puke. If he told Han Sen he was a demigod and wished to recruit him as a student, Han Sen was sure to believe he was an old man who had escaped the loony bin. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and enable notifications so you don't miss the next chapter.